HDR training. The reason why we're all getting together today is for learning the rules of indoor HDR shooting. Outdoor photography in HDR is so much more forgiving than indoor HDR. I'm sure you all can agree to that. Indoor HDR is just more difficult because the lighting is so much more tricky. The outside photos are so easy for us to process. But when it gets to indoor HDR, there's a little more that you have to pay attention to. You have to think a little bit more on your indoor HDR. The rules still apply. We're going to use aperture priority mode on the camera. So you're going to be shooting this in A mode. Okay? And by all means, keep your questions coming if you have any. You can chat message them in as we go. So we're going, but maybe save your questions until we get through some of the information so you don't ask a question that we'll already cover. So A mode, aperture priority mode. Why? When you don't use aperture priority mode, you run the risk of the camera refocusing and choosing a different f-stop. That could change the depth of field in your picture. So we want to use aperture priority mode. The aperture that you have to use is not set in stone. You can use you could use 5.6, f5.6. You could use f8. You could use f3.5 if you needed to. If you had a really dark room, you could go to f3.5 and you could use that. The lower the aperture, the brighter the picture. But the problem with the lower the aperture is the depth of field. You get more things out of focus when you use a lower aperture, like 3.5. If you use a higher aperture, like f8, you're going to get a sharper focus throughout the whole picture. That's why we use the f-stop. That's why we use A mode, aperture priority mode. Another thing, you have to use a tripod. You know, I've tried to do so many tests where I hold the camera still. It's just too difficult. Use a tripod to hold your camera when you're shooting indoor, outdoor, any HDR shot. Make sure the camera's level. You know, and some people will have a hard time with this. I'm working with someone that's in training right now, and she's a little bit shorter. So if she's shooting a front shot, and all of you, I think, are nodding your head yes. You know, if you're shooting a front shot and you've got a crooked street, this happens all the time. We've seen a lot of crooked front shots. You have to be able to look through your viewfinder when you're setting up this HDR front shot. You've got to look through the viewfinder and make sure that your house is level. You know, so establish that once you get your house level. And I know it's difficult because sometimes you have your camera up high and you have to change the settings between each picture. It can be a little bit more difficult, but do your best. You know, use the camera, keep the camera level. It will work that way. Okay. The easiest way to change the exposure between shots is to adjust the exposure compensation. You can use auto bracketing, but if you're inside, the auto bracketing might be too dark. So I'll use the auto as much as I can, but if I can't use the auto, I'll have to play with the exposure compensation a little bit. And you all should know what I'm talking about, the plus and minus button on your camera, right? Let me read this question here. I've only had experiences with HDR for outdoor shots. They all seem to come in a bit darker than they should. What am I doing wrong? Don't start at 0.0. Start at +1. Start at +1.0. That's a great point, Leo. Your first shot needs to look good. It can't look too dark. If your first shot is too dark, increase your exposure compensation on that first picture. Here, we're going to hammer that today. We're going to look at that a lot. Let's see here. So the easiest way to do that is to be in A mode and to adjust your exposure compensation. There are other ways to do it, but that's okay. Let's see. Is the first shot not plus or minus? It doesn't matter. The first shot is whatever you make it. Column. We just need 3 shots with different exposures. Here, look at this one. Here, the first shot in this series here is plus 2.7. The second shot is minus 1.0. The third shot is plus 1.0. It doesn't matter what the first shot is. What matters is I have 3 pictures that are all different exposure, same aperture. Okay? And all of those pictures make the HDR product. And you can see that the HDR is better. You can see, well, not better, different. Some people like it better, some people don't. You can see the detail in these steps. Do you see these stairs right here? You can see the detail in them. You can see, look at how much colorful this, we have candy here at CirclePix on the shelf. Travis can't keep his hands off the candy. You guys know Travis, right? But we've got candy over here, right? Look how detailed that candy is. Let's see here. Okay, here's some instructions that are important. Use caution in dark room. Use caution in a dark room. Okay, especially with bright windows. This is sometimes if the room is really dark, the darker the room, the harder your HDR. The darker the room, the more difficult it is to capture the HDR image. Yeah, like I said here, I would consider maybe not doing it, maybe just taking a still image. So let's say you get an order. Let's say that you get an order for one of these all HDR tours, 15 HDR shots, and you go to the house and you've got some dark rooms. If you can't shoot that dark room in HDR, I would explain to the agent. I would say, wow, this room is really dark. I'd be happy to do a panoramic image for you if you'd like it somewhere else. It's up to you guys. If you want to trade a panoramic for an HDR, that's fine. They equal the same thing. They're both premium images. So you can do that. You can change images. Like the reason that this HDR didn't work right here, can you see this? Bad example. The photographer started with an image that was too dark. This room is not necessarily too dark, but the photographer started with too low of an exposure. The photographer should have started with a higher plus to start with. Maybe the photographer, I think the photographer did, and they were just following instructions. You guys just have to learn. Originally, instructions were to start at 0.0 and then go to a plus 2.0 and then go to a minus 2.0. My instructions in the beginning were never locked into place, and I hope that I conveyed that. With camera settings, they're never locked into place. You have to change and make adjustments to make the picture look like something we can work with. And the case here is to get the picture, what I'm telling you is that very first picture needs to be bright enough for us to work with. So yeah, the original training was 0.0 outside and a plus 2.0 and a minus 2.0. And for the most part, all outside images will work like that because outside images are more forgiving than inside images. There's just more of a light source. Okay, but the inside ones you're going to need a little bit more training on, and that's what we're doing. Let's see. Yeah, thanks, Sue Ellen. Sue Ellen has my back. She said, you've always stressed to make adjustments as needed. I like it. Thanks, Sue Ellen. Good example. Here's a good example. Here's the starting 0.0, and then we didn't go to a minus 2. We went to, it does not matter the sequence. Someone asked if the sequence matters. Sequence of the pictures, the 1, 2, 3, it does not matter what order they're in, just as long as we have 3. Okay, perfect. You can see here. Here we have a bright, we have a 1.3, and we have a 0.0. We have a minus 1.3. So we have the 3 pictures, and here's the completed HDR. We thought it looked great. The machine put this together. We have a machine, a computer, a machine. The machines are taking over. Anyway, we have when you guys send in your HDR images, we have a program that puts them together and adjusts them. Well, if the program gets 3 images and they're 3 dark images, your finished product is going to be too dark. We're going to have our people, our processors, check all of these HDR tours in the beginning because I just know people are going to mess up, and that's okay. It's what people do. You know, we mess up. But that's why we're having this training so you guys can help you not mess up more. Okay, let's see here. Let's look at some questions. Does it matter the sequence? No. How 3 brackets are processed on your side? Yeah, it's done automatically. Or they're, yeah, okay, well, he asked this question and then I answered it. Yeah, the 3 images come in and a program puts them together. Now we're going to be needing to check these because of my worry about HDR images, so we are going to be checking them. and we're going to have to make adjustments to them. So like a picture like this would definitely need to be adjusted because that is not acceptable. And the photographer that shot this tour is the same photographer that shot this picture. He just made better adjustments here to get us a great-looking finished product. Okay, awesome. Okay, and I know some of you put together your own HDR, and if you do that, great. Continue to put together your own HDR. You guys are doing an awesome job of it. Let's see here. Let's see, questions. Let's see. The shutter speed is not important. We're not on a tripod. What? Let's see. And the shutter speed is not important since we're not on a tripod. We are on a tripod for these HDRs. We are going to be on a tripod. And it is changing the shutter speed. When you change the exposure compensation, it's changing the shutter speed. So we are changing the shutter speed. Okay, what software is used for the blending? It's a program that we've written here, but it's based off of Easy HDR. Okay, it's a program that we've written. Are they using any flash? Okay, that's a good question. I'll get to that as we go along, Mike. I have done some HDR where I've used flash, but it's just if you decide to use a flash, you don't get much change in your range. That rhymed. And I'll show you that as we go along. It can be done, and they do look okay. And Inta asked, Inta, yeah, can I process my files? Yes. You guys can process your own files, and you guys do a great job. Okay, excellent. Let's see if I have anything else here. Nope. Okay, excellent. Let's put together these tours now so I can make sure that everyone has this. Let's make sure that everyone has this uploading correct. First, let's do PixZip, and then we'll do a bulk with a Mac. We'll look at it with that. Let's open up PixZip, and let's go to File. Let's go to New. Let's choose our tour. It should be one of these in the shot queue. Yeah, there it is. We'll click OK. And then we'll open the folder. Okay, it's loading. Let's read this question, Leo. That's great. Once again, my experience is with outdoor front shots only. I shot a house a few days ago, and I couldn't get the entire house in the full frame of the shot or had too much of the street. What do I do? This is more difficult. This is difficult because you can't crop the image. You can't really, unless you process your own HDR, you can't crop them. Okay, this is not the tour that I want, so let's jump over here. Let's go to let's do this tour right here. Okay. Once again, Mike, a few days ago, couldn't get the whole entire house in the front. You do the best you can do in a situation like that, Leo. You try to get as much of the house as you can. When I go to a house and it's got a messed up front, like there's trees in the way, there's cars in the way, I'll probably take a couple front shots. I'll give the agent some free front shots because I can't get the ideal one that I want because a huge tree is in the way. So I'll take 3 front shots, but I'll take them from different angles, and I really hope that they'll like one of them. I'll do the best that I can. Okay. Should they mostly be vertical or horizontal? Kristen asked, should they mostly be vertical? Still shots, we always want them mostly horizontal. If you have to take a vertical still once in a while to shoot a bathroom or a condo, do it. You know, but mostly we want them horizontal. All right, excellent. Good question. Okay, so we have our full HDR tour here. This first one, it's a front shot. We're going to drag it right over here to the left, and we're going to name it front. You have to name it front. A lot of people mess up at this, but it can only be named front. It cannot be named front view house. If you name it front view house, it won't show up on the tour. So front. There we go. Then we hit our tab key. So just front, and then we hit the OK button. Okay, now we have our next HDR. So we just take the 3 pictures, drag them over here to the left, drop them, and let's say that this is a living room. Okay? It is a living room. And some of these are too dark. These were some tests I was running at my house. I was trying to see how badly I can mess up the system. It doesn't take much to mess up the system. This is too dark. You can't start with a picture that dark. Let's see, living room. Living room, hit the tab key, hit the OK button. Okay, then here, this is more like it. In fact, I think these were used with the flash. I did some flash testing here. So if I right-click on this and preview the image, this is done with a flash, but there's not much change. These are small. Let me see if I click on all these. Let me go preview. You can't see much change in these. Here, this is HDR with the flash. Here's the first one, and I was trying to make this room dark as I could. You can barely see the change, right? In these HDR. It still gives the effect when it goes through our system. The effect isn't that much, though. But if you get into a dark room and you want to experiment a little bit, try using your flash, and then change the exposure in between. So we'll drop that over there. I'm not going to go through all of these images. That would take too long. My computer's too slow. The newer your computer, the faster Pixip will run on it. Let's name this the living room. Let's hit the tab key. Let's hit the OK. Oh, it already exists. We got to go with second view, right? Second view, hit the OK button. And so on, but that's how you would do it. Once you've got all of your HDR set up, you'd put 15 over here. And maybe you throw some stills over here as backups. If you guys give us a good still image, we can do a lot to it to make it look HDR. Show one inside without a flash. Okay, that first one was without a flash. And this one is without a flash. Here's 1, 2, 3. These 3 images, no flash. It's a dining room, and I'm just going to drag it right over here, and then I'm going to label it. But let me see how dark they are. I would need to start with something brighter. Instead of starting with a 0.0, I would probably need to start with a plus 2.0 instead of a 0.0. So I would start with the plus 2.0, and then maybe I would go to like a plus 3, and then maybe I would go to a plus 1. So I have a plus 1, a plus 2, and a plus 3. There's still going to be enough difference in each picture to give us a good HDR effect. Just make sure that you can see that difference in your pictures. Make sure that you can notice. You can say, yeah, that one's a little bit brighter, that one's a little bit brighter, and that one's a little bit darker. Make sure that you can see that difference. Okay, dining room. We'll hit the tab key, we'll hit the OK button. Okay, awesome. So here's one. Let's see. Here's one without a flash. 1, 2, 3. No flash, and there's not that much of a difference in these pictures, but there is a difference. But the room was so dark that the difference can't be that considerable. So let me preview these images. Let me cancel this. Let me preview these for you. 1, 2, 3. Let's right-click. Let's preview images. Let's see some of these other questions that came in here too. Yeah, Steve said a little indirect flash can do a lot, bring out shadows and detail. This is true. Yeah, you'd be surprised at how the little amount of flash that you use can make a big difference. Thanks, Steve. Is there any difference between using the external flash as opposed to the built-in flash with HDR indoor shots? Well, the built-in flash is not going to be as bright, but you don't need it to be that bright, so you can experiment with using that onboard flash. Do you have that, let's see here. Do you have that with a plus 3, a plus 2, and a plus 1? I don't know, Colum. I think I have it somewhere in my examples, but in the PowerPoint, in the PDF that we were using, it's almost a plus 2, a plus 3, a plus 1. Let me pull that PowerPoint back up so we can take a quick look at that. Oh, man, I've got all these things hiding my screen. Okay, let's see what we got over here. Okay, here's a plus 2.7, a minus 1, and a plus 1. Okay, here is a, let's see. What this one, this bad example here, this should have been like this could have been a plus 1, a plus 2, and a plus 3, and it would have came out way better than it looks here. Okay, this good example here is it's just a 0, a minus 1.3, and a plus 1.3. So there's not that much difference in the photos, but there's enough to give us a very cool effect. That's a cool HDR effect right there with those 3 pictures that don't have that much difference between them. Okay. Okay, here's this one. So let's look at these. Okay, so not that much difference in these photographs that I'm showing you right here. Here's my living room. Here is the plus. This is the plus, whatever it is. It's probably a plus 3. Here is a probably a 1, and this one could be a plus 2. So there's your example of that, of that difference. So yeah, just make sure don't overcomplicate this. Make sure that the pictures are not too dark that you send us. If the pictures are too dark, the machine that puts them together has a hard time bringing the light up in that dark, dark image. Okay? Okay, awesome. Let's see here. Let's see what other questions we have that came in. The histogram is your best way to determine the correct exposure. Yes. If you guys are experienced in looking at the histogram, start to look at that. You can turn it on by switching some things on your camera. Actually, fill flash when doing brackets helps minimize color cast. This is true. Thanks, Ali. Yeah, using the flash, that's why we use the flash all the time, to help balance the color so the color looks real. So when you use your flash doing HDR, it can help stabilize colors so they don't look too orange or too yellow. You'll have to experiment a little bit with it. Guys, if I were you, I would download, a lot of you probably already have the HDR softwares, download Easy HDR, play with it, throw 3 pictures in it, and see what you come up with on your own. You don't have to buy the program. You can play with it for free. It puts a watermark on your image. But you can play with it and see where I'm going with all of this. That's what I do that all the time. Okay, perfect. Good. Okay, let's see here. So we've got our tour done here. Let's just go to File. Let's save it. Let's save what we've done. Remember, these notes don't come to us, so just type in some gibberish. Click Save. Yes, we know we don't have as many pictures as we want. And then we're going to, well, we saved it, so now we need to go to File, and we need to Export. And here's our tour right here. We're going to click on it, and it always says no front shot, right? Because we put our front shot over here on the left. There's no front shot up here in the right top. If you process your own HDR front shot, you would put it up here in the right. Okay, but we don't do that, so we're going to click Export. So it's exporting our tour right now. And I'm not going to continue to upload this. You guys know how to upload it. Everyone in here should know how to upload that. So that is saving right now. That's taking you through Pixip. Okay, now let's do a bulk upload. Okay. Let's see if this is the file that we need to organize. It's not. Okay. Here's the file that we need to organize. It has our pictures for the day in it. All of you know that the front shot needs to go into a folder called front_HDR. And we just take the 3 shots there, put them in there. Then, let's say you have a family room, HDR, right? We're going to make a new folder, and it's going to be called FR_HDR. And we're going to take the 3 pictures of the family room, put them in there. And let's see if I have someone in this class that messed this up the other day when they were uploading, someone that's new. They're not in my class. Darn it. Okay. So there's our family room. Let's say we have a living room. Let's go make a folder, LR_HDR, and we'll put the 3 pictures of the living room into that folder. Okay, awesome. All right. And so on. Let's say we have another picture of the living room, right? You're doing a small condo, but you have to take 25 pictures there, so you're going to take multiple pictures of the living room. So this one's going to be called LR2_HDR. Living room second view HDR. So we're going to take those 3 pictures, put them in the LR2_HDR. Let's say you're in a mansion, and it has a second living room. So you're going to make a new folder that says 2LR_HDR. And then we're going to grab that second living room. We're going to put it in there, and we've got it. Let's say that you don't need any more of these pictures to save time. Let's delete all these. Okay, so we've got our full tour, right? And now we need to, you'll have 15 different folders in here, and they'll all be their own little individual HDR room, right? Within one folder, you just put 3 images. That's the only way that the machine will recognize it. Okay, so there it is. Now, you guys know how to do this, but let's just check this out here. Let's do, we're uploading this one right here. So we're going to copy this. I'll just go through this because I have some new people in this class. We'll just rename this. We'll paste it on there. We'll make a dated folder for today's date, 10-24-13. We'll throw this in there. We'll zip this folder, send to compressed zipped folder, and that's what we'll upload the finished product. Let's see, we got some other, if we process our own HDRs, you said that the front goes on the right, but will the other HDR pics also go on the, no. If you process them, yes. If you process your own HDRs, treat them just like a regular still image. Good question, Debbie. Thank you. I hope everyone understands that. In PixZip, let's bring up PixZip. If you have your HDRs that are processed, they're in the center window here. You will drag them over to the still images, right? Because they're already processed. You won't put anything over here if you process them. If we process them, you put them over on the left. Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's see here. Let's bring this. Okay, so we've got that zipped version done. It's right here. That's what we need to send to CirclePix. I'm not going to send it because you guys already know how to send it. Let's see here. Can you name the HDR software you mentioned? Easy HDR. It's right here. Here, I'll even put one together for you real quick. Easy HDR. This is how easy. Some of you may not have seen this. I just love Easy HDR. I've talked to the owner of it a couple times. He's in Poland. Good guy. And it's easy. Hence the title of it, Easy HDR. It works great. Let me pull up this HDR test right here. Oh, you guys can't see this. Let me pull this over here where you can see it. So here's a little bit of an HDR test. Let's pull up these images. Oh, these are completed ones. Some of these images completed, like that's an HDR image that that's completed that you saw of that one room. And it's okay. It looks good. It's got too much grain in it. This was with the flash. I was doing some tests. So that's not a prime example. Here's another HDR image that was put together. That's got a lot of grain in it also. I was using a higher ISO doing some testing. Let's see. Here's another one that was put together. That's really green. So that's why we would need to fix some of the images that are put together by the machine. Okay. Let's do a little test of how to bring these into this program. All you do is you take 3 of your HDR, you take 3 of your images like this, 1, 2, 3, and then you just drag them right up there in the top right, and you drop them. And then Easy HDR blends them. You click Generate. Okay, we click Generate HDR. It puts them together real quick. And then you can do some tone mapping on them. You can make some simple adjustments to fix the color in them and things like that. If you want to get in there and play with this kind of stuff, it's fun to play with. And you can make awesome things. We have a photographer that Lance Kinney. He has made some awesome stuff. If you ever want to look up that name, Lance Kinney, he's made great stuff. But you can fix things in here. You can adjust the strength of the HDR photo, and you can change those things. You can adjust the saturation. A lot of times needs to be adjusted. You can make adjustments to those things. It'll go to black and white if you move it all the way down. But yeah, okay, great. That's Easy HDR. It's a nice little HDR program. Okay, let's see if there's some other questions that have come in here. Oh yeah, someone asked if I was going to show. Yeah, those were some shots that were processed. Thanks, Colin. So yeah, they can look great. Yeah, with those shots were, let's see. let's see. Yeah, let's go into my account and let's look at, well, I had some really dark ones in there that were processed. Column asked, are you going to show us some shots that were processed with PixZip? Let's go and look at some of these. Yeah, I just did a test tour where I threw everything into it, even the dark ones, so you can see if they're too dark, they're going to be too dark on the tour. Let's look at these right here. Some of these are going to be too dark. Like, look at that. I started with too dark of an image. I started with a 0.0 and did a plus 2.0 and a minus 2.0. And look at the result. It's way too dark. That's why you can't start with too dark of an image. There's all kinds of images on this one that are good and some are bad. This was with a flash, but it's still too dark. I needed to start with a higher plus. This one is too dark. This one image that you see here, that's a 0, a plus 2, and a minus 2. Too much change in between each picture. Less change would have been better, like maybe a plus 1, a plus 2, and a plus 3, or a 0, a plus 1, and a plus 2. Some things like that. Okay. Why was the easy better on that living room? Well, that's a person putting it together versus a machine, and it's the images that I selected column to work with. I didn't send in easy images like that. I wanted to mess up the machine. That's what my goal was in these pictures here, to mess up the machine to see how much it could do with crappy images. And it didn't do that well. And that's why we're going to need to have people looking at your HDR that you put together. Okay, awesome. Good questions, guys. I hope you got something out of this meeting. The whole point to this meeting is these 3 pictures that you give us, just make sure they're not too dark inside. I want you guys to experiment on your own. The numbers that I give are never set in stone. They're meant to you to adjust. There are things that are set in stone. Keep your aperture the same. Use a tripod. Make your photos level. Those are things that are set in stone. You know, if you follow those rules and your pictures aren't too dark, the machine that puts them together, the program, is going to do all right. And then if there's something that we need to fix, we can always fix that. Yes, someone asked does someone check the program generated images to make sure that they look good? Yes, we are going to be checking those HDR images. But if we ever miss something and you see one of your HDR tours that you sent in, call us and be like, this looks awful. Can you guys please fix this? And then we'll fix it, you know. As long as we can fix it. Images can be beyond repair sometimes, but Column, you asked a question. Are we still good at F8? No. Yes. Whatever. F8 is a good, you weren't here in the beginning, Column. You weren't here in the beginning. That's why you're asking this question. Your f-stop is not set in stone. If you go into a room and it's really dark, you can start with an f4.8 if you wanted to. But once you set your f-stop for the first picture, it needs to be the same for all 3. It's not set at f8. It never was. F8 is a great place to start when you're outdoors because f8 is really sharp. It's in focus really good. So if it's darker, go lower. Lighter, go higher. Yes, that's a fine rule to play with. That's a good rule. Okay. Help with more range on your end, that sort of thing. Yeah, you'll adjust the range on your end. I think that's the question there. So the preferred f-stop, the preferred f-stop is always a little bit on the higher side because when you're on a higher f-stop, you get more information in the picture in focus. The lower the f-stop, the background gets blown out. Here, let me just Google low f-stop, and then don't want to pull up any bad images here. Let's just Let's just look at low f-stop. Here's low f-stop, right? Look at, even right here on this girl is blurry, and behind is blurry. This might be an f-stop of like a 1.4. Her face is in focus, but everything behind is out of focus. So, yeah, you wouldn't want to use an f-stop of 1.4 because the depth of field is very shallow. You get all this, you get this in focus, all this is out of focus. That's what you get with a lower f-stop. No, we're not shooting these in RAW. The best size to shoot your HDRs in is 5 megapixel or a little bit higher. You know, some of your cameras don't do 5 megapixel. They're too powerful. Here's another good example of low f-stop. Look at Minnie Mouse there. I love Disneyland. Minnie Mouse is in focus. Everything else is out of focus. That's a low f-stop, probably a 1.4 or pretty close to it. It's great for portrait work and stuff like that, but for what we do, everything needs to be in focus. So yeah, a little bit higher f-stop. Okay, cool. Can you use the Lightroom to change the exposure? Oh, Sue Ellen. Can you use Lightroom to change the exposure if it is too dark and then merge them into HDR? If you process your own HDRs, yes, you can do that. If we process them, you just have to be careful with it because you never know what the program is going to do to them. So yes, if you do it, you can do that, but just be careful. You can do some tests. Send in some extra images. I want you guys to experiment and test with these. If you ever want a practice tour put in your account, email me. Don't tell me right now because I won't remember to do it. If you want a practice tour put in your account to practice some HDR indoor shots, do it. Or to save you time, just practice some indoor shots on your next shoot. Just add some indoor HDR shots to their tour so you can get some practice in. All right, you guys, that's all I have. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to learn this. I know that you want to give us your best work, and that's what we're trying to do here. Let's see, another question here. Do you have any target photos to compare with our own work to give us a baseline? Just the photos that we were looking at, Earl, just those photos in the synopsis that I sent to you in the email. There's some photos that you can compare to your own. Try some of those same. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Oli. Try some of those settings, you know. How do you change the f-stop on my Nikon 3000? That's a good question. How do you change the f-stop on your camera? When your camera, if some of you probably have your cameras with you, well, you need to shoot with your camera on the A. Aperture priority, that's what that stands for. When your camera is on the A, you can change the f-stop by moving the little dial on the front or the back of your camera. That will change the f-stop. So find your f-stop, f5.6, f4.3, whatever you decide it to be, set your f-stop, and then you're going to use the plus and minus button to change the exposure on each picture. The only tricky part is not moving your camera while you're changing the exposure. You know, you can't move your camera. That looks like the correct website. If you wanted to find easy, someone was asking how to find easy HDR. I would just do this. I would just go like this. Oh, the website is this, easyhdr.com. Just type that in, easyhdr, and that will take you right to, this is it. This is the website, easyhdr. Man, since we've started using this, it's become very popular. Cool. Okay, let's minimize this. So that's how you change the f-stop, Leo. Okay, most of the camera let you set up bracketing. Yeah, if you have a higher end camera, you can set up bracketing in your camera. There's a little button on it that says bracketing, and you can do that. Some cameras now, they do in-house, in-camera, in-house. They do in-camera HDR, and we'll accept that. If you want to shoot HDR on the built-in setting of your camera, if you want to make this easy for you, it works most of the time. You can buy a camera that has built-in HDR. I just bought a D51 5200, and it has built-in HDR. It doesn't look the same exact as when we do it, but it looks pretty good. The D51 has it as well, someone just said. So your next camera, maybe you want to consider that. It will work most of the time. We'll have to do more testing with that, I should say. You know, if you have a camera that shoots in-house, in-camera HDR, we'll have to look at those pictures and see if they're as good as the ones we put together. You know, but then you could send them in as finished processed HDRs. Okay, how bad is the moving trees? Okay, someone asked about moving trees and wind. If it's windy and you're taking these HDRs, yeah, it's going to show up as blurry. The trees, if it's really windy outside and the trees are moving, they're going to look kind of blurry. So you have to consider that. You have to tell the agent about that. Maybe you just take a regular front shot. Maybe you just take a regular front shot and then you call CirclePix once it's uploaded and say, hey, can you guys make that front shot look HDR? And we'll say, yes, we can. We're not going to do that. If you call in and do that every tour, we're not going to do that, but you can do that. Here, check this out. Look at this. Here's a tour that I shot, and it's not HDR, but you guys, I think you'll be amazed. I think you'll say, wow, that really looks HDR, Sean, but it's not. Let me take you to this real quick. 209, let's see here. Let me log in. Let me jump over here, posted. Let's see here. Sundance. Okay, here it is. Let me see if we got some. How do we know if the camera has built-in HDR? What camera do you have, Debbie? Tell me and I'll tell you. I think I can tell you. Okay, this front shot, this was HDR, because we do all front shots in HDR, right? But this shot here, let's see. Let's click on this. I should let the tour download to my computer first, but okay, this is opening. Let's see if we have any other questions here. Okay, you guys can see these. They're kind of small though, right? These are not HDR. Like this picture here, this is called LDR, low dynamic range. It's in the Easy HDR program, you can create this effect that makes it look like an HDR image. Like here, look at this kitchen. To me, people that I show this to say, yeah, that's HDR. But it's not. It's just LDR. This shot also of the kitchen is LDR. We're going to start trying. We're getting ready to do some auto enhancing to all pictures that come in. So this is kind of what we're looking at here, but that's just information to come. But that's not an HDR picture, but it looks very HDR. It was just shot with a flash, and why did you shoot that kitchen in? This kitchen was shot probably in aperture priority. This was probably shot at an f8. I usually like to try to shoot my stills in aperture priority mode, and I usually like to shoot them at like 5.6 or f8 or something like that. As you guys progress and you learn more, you can start shooting your stuff in aperture priority mode. I know some of you shoot in manual mode, and some of you do everything in HDR already, and that's cool. It just depends on how much time you spend and things like that. But now with this new HDR tour, it does not include any virtuals. It's just 15 HDR images. Okay, great. Let's see. Yes, Sue Ellen said the closer you are to the tree when it's windy is the worst. Yes, that's true. So if you can get further back, if it's windy, that will help. What do you shoot the kitchen in? Oh, did you shoot that kitchen in? This was shot in probably f5.6 or f8. I don't know what it was shot in. But this was a great cabin. This was a retreat that the manager stayed in. You know, we usually try to do trade and stay places by doing trade with people. We'll do a virtual tour for them, and they'll let us stay there. Okay, very cool, you guys. What size files? Your still images, all still images that you guys take need to be at least 5 megapixels. Virtual images need to be small basic or 1600 by 1200. including HDRs. HDRs are still images, right? So they need to be shot in 5 megapixels at least. And most everyone that's in this class, your camera does more than 5 megapixels, right? It does 25 megapixels now, or, you know. So just shoot accordingly. If you can get your stills the closest you can to 5 megapixels, you'll have faster uploads and things like that. And we can still print them, and they look good. It's been a pleasure meeting with you guys. You guys are awesome. You guys have a great day. If there's any other questions, get them in there right now because we're going to end this. I also recorded today's session. So yes, let me... I just lost my... Let's see here.